Welcome. These will be my thoughts on The Flash, Season 1, Episode 1, Pilot. The episode is rated TV PG, so will this video be? There will be spoilers for the episode and the Arrowverse leading up to it. And yeah, like every episode of Arrow so far, the first two seasons, absolutely love this episode. My friend who requested I cover this show, Arts Cafe, said, of this episode, as well as the last two episodes of Season 2 of Arrow, that they were epic and mind-blowing, and yeah, 3 for 3, absolutely agreed. So I'm going to start with, there's a little bit of deleted scenes on the DVD that I have, and it's basically the, let's see, what was the, I'm struggling to recall what the very first of them, oh, right, yes, so yeah, there's a setup bit where Joe tells, he doesn't quite go as far as he does in the actual episode, but it's him trying to get Barry to realize, it's something like, you don't see the world as it is, and I'm glad it's on the DVD. It's too bad that there wasn't really room for it in the episode. I appreciate there's nothing else you could cut. And the let's see, I think that brings us to the second one, which was the there was right the yeah, so after, yeah, when Joe is talking to Barry after the most of the events of the episode, and asks, did the lightning bolt do this? After that, Barry talks to Iris, and she says, you can't lie to me, we basically grew up together. And he says he would never lie to her, which is, of course, he is technically lying to her about this. Yeah, which, yeah, you should not lie to Iris or the IRS. You can get in serious trouble for that. I'm not speaking from experience. And then there was a flashback of the final of the deleted scenes was a flashback right before Barry talks to Henry. Yeah, we see him starting to live in the West household, and he tells Iris, my dad didn't do it, and she says she believes him, which I quite appreciated. And yes, that is it for those. So yeah, the so IMDb trivia notes that there's this is not 100% consistent with how the there's the thing about, like, in Arrow, Barry gets home late and is unable to go to the yeah, the particle accelerator. And then in this episode, it goes down a little bit different. I don't really think it's a problem. I really appreciate when, and like, clearly they wanted to do something else, and they accomplished things by handling it that other way. But yeah, right from the start, this hits the ground running, and you immediately get a sense that, this is not going to just be the same show as Arrow, but just with a different, I was going to say protagonist, but really the entire, main cast is different. And, Arrow, when he appears later in the episode, acknowledges, they are not quite the same. And I think, yeah, I quite appreciated that. I think it's, ideal for these to have their own identities. If you haven't already watched that Jesse Gender short, it's amazing. Anyway, I think yeah, there's a very distinct difference between, Oliver, yeah, on on the island, and then Barry gleefully running through the city at, incredible speeds. I really thought I appreciated the way that this episode has several bits of narration, and I guess I'm not sure it's all of it, but at least some of it you can see, okay, yeah, he's telling the things he's telling us, the audience, is also something he's telling a character. And I suppose it's no, yeah, I'm not quite sure who he's talking to there at the start. Because it's not Arrow, because he like introduces himself. He says, "My name is Barry Allen." Arrow knows that by the time yeah, I'm not sure that part is to, and I'm not saying it has to be. I think that does cover the sort of overarching. I thought the non-linear timeline worked well, and the yeah, first we see the running itself, and we go back 14 years, and we see, some of his mother's death, which later is flashed back to. I don't know yet if this is going to have as consistent flashback use as Arrow does so far, the first two seasons that I've watched. I don't really mind either way. But you know what? I think before I talk too much more, yeah, and right, and then we go back to the present day, and only by the end of the episode are we at the point that where he's running through the city in Glee. I promise I'm going to try to not constantly reference Glee. I haven't even watched it. I might at some point. I do really, really love Scream Queens, and I am intending to watch other Ryan Murphy stuff, though I'm absolutely not making any excuses for yeah, which I guess I at this point in the video might as well. So okay, I said I would keep this PG, so I'm not gonna go into detail. You probably already know. Well, let's see. Okay, how do I get into this without? I will just say. So I've already mentioned Ryan Murphy. Illuminati recently did an excellent video called "There Are No Monsters, Only People," and you can probably figure out what the subject matter is from the context clues by now. And yeah, as per usual, she's great. I think that, but yeah, so the running is just one of many things where this is already topping the DCEU Flash in general, and that includes the Solo movie, which I do still think there are some things that are great about that movie. But yeah, I have never been a fan of the way the run looks in the DCEU. And yeah, I think it's much better here. And some of what helps is a combination of CG and practical elements that really help make it feel real. And perhaps some of that is, TV show, although they certainly had a decent budget for this thing. Like, there was more superpower use than I was anticipating, and multiple car crashes. Which I do appreciate. Technically, a car crash is not the most expensive, but it does take some time and planning. It can be a relatively inexpensive way to add production value to a production. Now, but yeah, so in the DCEU, I felt that they rested the camera too much on just seeing the lightning, and we're just watching him run in the middle of the screen. And here he'll run through the frame, and we get like the POV shots were one of the things that really helped sell it. And also shots of his face as he's running, and we see like it's almost a blur, stuff behind him, and all of this edited together really helps sell the illusion and also give us a sense of what it feels like to him. And yeah, I think that just go. Yeah, I thought it worked really well when we see sort of just a flash between cars, and then some of the cars like almost gets raised slightly off the and I think he smashes at least some of the glass by running past so fast. Didn't mean for that to rhyme, but yeah, it's stuff like that that really helps to yeah. And yeah, like you get a sense almost immediately of if this show is going to be for you. Like I remember years ago hearing people who really love Arrow saying that Flash was a little harder for them to get into. They were hoping that this would have this somewhat more obviously not like grimdark, but darker, harsher tone that Arrow has. And I mean, at the end of the day, obviously both of them, you know, have at least one dead parent, but it is a different kind of, yeah. When we start Arrow, Oliver is finally able to leave the island, so that's a significant, at the end of the day, like Barry, I'm not saying he's had it easy, but he has not gone through the island, And I think that pretty well brings us to, yeah, the thing about, I've always been running, mostly from bullies. Sometimes I got away, sometimes I didn't. And I really like the very, yeah, authentic moment that, mom's like, this thing of like, he was standing up for kids who were bullied for not being cool. And, she says, a good heart is better than fast legs, which is, of course, by the end of the episode, he has both. And I can imagine that they are going to do something with, like, because, like, he has all this power now that he didn't used to. I wouldn't rule out that they might do something where he's going to, it's a classic for, in general costumed heroes, but perhaps especially the ones who have superpowers of some kind, at some point they're going to have to make a choice and show that they are not being, corrupted by the power, that they're still good. I think that does bring us to, but yes, so, and yeah, when Henry comes home, that's when he starts calling him Slugger. And, the thing about, did you win? And, mom's like, Henry, I swear. But that was, yeah. And let's see, or wait, or was it that she said, but he won, or somebody said that he won, and he was like, great. But no fighting. And let's see, yeah, I think that does bring us to the part where, so yeah, one night, he wakes up and he's perceiving things moving, yeah, yeah, and he goes downstairs and see, I know just enough about the comic. I know a little bit more about Flash in the comics than Arrow. Still not as much as, when it comes to DC, it's more Batman and Superman that I know. But I think I know what is happening in that room, and I'm not gonna discuss it before the yeah, before it's revealed at some point on the show. But you know, it works really well as this thing of like, telling viewers who know the comics, that I don't know if it's gonna be the exact same thing, but at least, visually, it's clearly inspired by it, and they're saying, you know, don't worry, like we love the comics too. And it works really well as this mystery. Like I can hardly wait to find out more. And I think that does cover. Yeah, I really appreciate it. His mom trying to protect him during that, and Henry gets him out of there, and then I think that's when we go to we see him running out of the house, and we do a match cut to him running in the present day. And now we met Captain Singh, who he was on the phone with in one of the Arrow episodes he was in. And I thought it worked well that, so the people who know Barry, they are either covering for him and trying to help him, like Joe, or they're kind of like, really? When they have to deal with him, it's like he is. It's that thing of, when Arrow saw him, he was like, do your parents know you're here, or something to that effect, and yeah, Barry gets misunderestimated, and people don't. Yeah, and we see that he is, as we also saw on, this reiterates, he is amazing as CSI. He immediately gets like so much of the, like he identifies the car like in no time. And I thought it worked really well, them using this what's it called, like overlay to show what he's seeing. I think it would have felt a little awkward if he was just saying out loud, those exact details. And yeah, I think it's working well that, he has a skill set that is very different from Oliver's, but they are both very capable and impressive. And yeah, I can imagine, so I haven't watched past this episode yet, but I can imagine the thing about, the fact that he's CSI, that he works with cops, that's going to be part of how he finds the people that he's going to stop and the ones he's going to help. Where, Arrow at first had the what's it called, notebook for the people he was supposed to stop. And I think, I thought it worked really well that, so Joe was like, the reason he was late, and the thing about, before you give me an excuse, just remind you, last time, you said car trouble. Is like, I don't have a car. Well, I think that might be the trouble. And Joe saying he was on an errand for me. Barry, can you give me the thing that I got for you? And I just wanted there to be an outtake where Barry's like, what are you talking about? But yeah, and the only thing he can think of is like, well, I don't know, this chocolate bar, I guess, which I already took a bite out of. I'm not sure Captain Singh is even really buying it. It's just like, well, okay, whatever. Let's just move on, And the thing about, before Barry gets there, you have the, the words said are, have CSI gone over it? No, they haven't. Where is Barry? Because, like, it's not, CSI haven't gone over it yet. That's very peculiar. I have no idea what's going on. It's just like, again, really? And it is genuinely cute that he, before he became Flash, before he got the powers, he was late all the time. And I really felt like it worked well for this episode. So I read that apparently, maybe I already mentioned that because it was in the IMDb trivia for one of the episodes of Arrow, but apparently originally they weren't going to do a pilot specifically for this show. They were just going to have, the backdoor pilot on Arrow season 2 be it. I'm really, really glad that they did. There's so much in this episode that they couldn't possibly have fit in Arrow episodes, so yeah, I think the fact that we see, what a normal day for him, is before the lightning, and then we see stuff after I think that does bring us to, let's see, the let's see. Yeah, you have the I think that's when, oh, did I already mention, I believe this is when the first of those deleted scenes happens, where Joe tells him you have to see things the way they are. And right now I can't quite remember if it was in a deleted scene or not, but either deleted scene or this episode he mentions, oh, there was a guy who could bend steel with his bare hands. That's B-A-R-E, hands. And I guess that does get us to when we, but not Barry, first meet Iris. And I so like this version of Iris better, which is not, I'm not denigrating the actress that they cast for the DCEU, especially in the Flash solo movie, which was also where she was given more to do than in the Snyder Cut. But yeah, I do think she really works. And I guess I have already mentioned that I like this actor better for Barry Allen than Ezra in the DCEU, and honestly, that was before I knew the messed up things that Ezra has done. Now, I think that might bring us. Let's see. Yeah, I'm not going to lie. I feel a little bad for Eddie because he seems like a nice guy. I would very much like to see Barry and Iris together. They are very, very cute together. And I really like the part where, he's explaining it and she says, you're doing that thing where you're not speaking English. You really need a girlfriend, stuff like that. Just, yeah. And I think, does that bring us to the yeah, and you have the thing about, maybe your dad won't let me go if I can't, if I don't make enough progress on this. That was another thing that was in that deleted scene, him saying, I was really hoping to see the, particle accelerator, but I appreciate that, it's not going to happen while Martin is on the loose. So the Mardens at that point. Anyway, the yeah, I think that does bring us. Yeah, and the Atom Smasher reference. Cool. Yeah, that brings us to when the while I try to remember, I'm gonna let one of my neurons run off in another direction, see if I can remember what happened next in the episode. I did want to say I know I've already talked some about how this show is already, the identity is very distinct from Arrow. While Arrow did have some very comic booky stuff from very early on, the trick arrow thing, one of the first things we see is very comic booky, but it was not as full on superpowers. It was more like gritty, down to earth comic booky. The sort of Batman territory. I thought it worked really well that this already had so much of that, and yeah, I guess I already mentioned that it's the first thing that we see here. Yeah, I think right, and the fact that, I mean, technically you can watch this without having watched Arrow. Like, you'd be wondering, like, who's the guy in the green mask and firing arrows, but that's it. Like, and like, they don't drop something huge here that's like, who's that? Yeah. And the episode came out in 2014. I wouldn't rule out some people like went online and was like, who is the guy in the green? And yeah. Let's see. Yes, I think the next thing was that, so yeah, the test came through. Oh, right. Yeah. I did kind of chuckle at the pen also. That was my father's pen. He gave it to me before he died. It's passed down for generations. My grandfather used it to kill Nazis, but sure, go ahead and ruin it. And let's see. I guess it would probably be his father, not his grandfather, killing Nazis. Anyway, yeah, I think that brings us to, so yeah, the test is done, and yeah, now can I go with Iris to the, yeah. And so holy crap, I am gonna have to speed this up or we'll be here all night. 27 minutes of me talking. I think we're maybe 5 or 10 minutes into the episode. Okay, so we have the part where, yeah, so they're in line, and he's trying to ask her out, and she thinks that he doesn't want it to be awkward to talk to her about girls, and yeah, let's see. I think that brings us to, yeah, so yeah, there's oh right, and we have yeah, that thing about how, and this I do appreciate, this is not a Hollywood invention. There is something to it in real life. I don't often remember experiencing myself, but there are some cases where a man will buy food for himself, and then a woman, and in my experience, like, isn't it usually partners? So maybe she's being very, is it sometimes friends? Just I don't know, possibly, but yeah. And yeah, and she says, oh, I'll be more muffin top than woman. Felicity also made a reference to, I'm gonna end up with a big belly. It feels a little weird to have with, I get that in real life as well. There are a number of women who will be very concerned about their appearance, even if they're not actually gaining weight, which, to be clear, is not something that just, women are just born with. No. It's like patriarchy and capitalism, consumerism that's driving that. This idea that women only have worth insofar as they are deemed attractive to men is completely ridiculous. But yeah, I do appreciate that's what's happening there. But yeah, and she brings up her dissertation, and then later is like, my laptop, my dissertation's in there, which, yeah, obviously Barry is going to chase down the guy. I mean, it goes a little bit better than when, let's see, was it Thea who chased down Roy, maybe? Or, wow, that was a while ago, but yeah, something like that. Anyway, yeah, so I think that does, yeah, and I did appreciate, yeah, he manages to hit Barry several times, and for a few seconds it looks like he really is going to hand over the laptop, and then he hits him with it. And then, Eddie pops up and references, you are not faster than a speeding bullet. I know those were not his exact words, but I'm pretty sure that's what we were meant to hear there. So that was fun. And I mean, technically we didn't see Barry. He hasn't done it. He didn't do it in this episode, but in the comics, certainly Barry can indeed run faster than a speeding bullet. So I can imagine. And yes, I was also making the Superman reference, classic Superman reference. And yes, I think that kind of gives you an idea of how old of a character Superman is. The fact that, the way they show, the one of the lines is more powerful than a locomotive, which, like, today, I wonder how many teenagers even know what a locomotive is. It's when the reason for doing something is kind of ridiculous. But yes, so Barry references, why does that guy act like this was some amazing thing? It was just stopping a mugger. And he immediately gets jealous when she says, oh, that's Pretty Boy. Pretty Boy? No, I mean, that's what my father calls him. I guess he is kind of pretty. Meanwhile, Barry's standing there. He's more boy than pretty. And yeah, I felt like that relationship made a lot of sense. And yes, so that brings us to him back in the lab. And the oh right, it was very cool meeting I swear I will learn all these names, though. Right, I meant to mention this early in the video. For those who haven't, I know I've said it at least once in a recent Arrow video, but it will be a little while. It'll be, I guess, 2 months maybe before I do the rest of the season of this. Maybe closer to a month and a half. Anyway, after this episode, it was, Arts Cafe recommended that I do this episode now before waiting. But yeah, next I'm going to do season 1 of Fear the Walking Dead, which I'm expecting to spend about 2 weeks on. And then I am going to do every episode of, I want to say it's called MODOK is the next, not MODOK, of the Marvel shows on Disney Plus, the recent ones. There's not very many of them left that I haven't already covered, but yeah. And then it is the rest of season 1 of The Flash. But yes, I think that does... in time I will learn all the names. But yeah, the guy who, by the end of the episode, it seems like he doesn't need a wheelchair. If I still edited clips into videos, and I edited clips into videos, this is where I would put that line from Deadpool and Wolverine about, the woke mob's not going to like this ableism. Anyway, let's see. Yeah, it was really cool meeting him, and yeah, I think that pretty well covers. Let's see. Yes. Let's see. That's when the right. So yes, Barry back at the, yeah, we see the, the particle accelerator off in the distance, and the chemicals, and at this point I was struck by something. Not lightning, even though I wouldn't mind the speed healing right about now, but because the physical pain. Every so often I gotta remind myself not everybody watches every one of my videos, but yeah, back pain and such. Anyway, yes. But no, the thing was how similar the the movement of the chemicals looked to the, which was this when, no, I think it was later in the episode, wasn't it? But yeah, at one point in the episode we see, you know, flashback to his mother dying, and you know, don't hurt him, stay away from him, or something along those lines, you know. And yeah, anyway, we see him wake up, and he does indeed. Oh, right, I liked, you know, Cisco playing the song so that Barry, you know, and I believe it is accurate that it helps patients in recovery. And I liked, you know, the doctor. I will try to be respectful, saying, well, you know, those are the last to go. And yeah, Barry pulls the classic waking up in any American TV show or movie in a hospital bed thing. And yeah, I appreciate that they explain, you know, why he can move, and he's now got abs and everything, despite, you know, a coma long enough that could go from conception to birth. And was that the idea? Because he's kind of being born again? I don't know. But then yeah, that's when we see that he's the guy who ran the place is in a wheelchair, and you know, he points out we should really do some tests. I like the doctor just, you know, saying pee in this, and Cisco's like, not right this second. And yeah, and him asking, you know, can I keep the t-shirt? Speaking of Cisco, his t-shirt, you know, choice is still fantastic. I think that brings us to the, let's see. Yeah. He runs and talks to Iris, and we see that he can perceive the world faster. You know, seconds are like hours to him. And the let's see. Yeah, I could appreciate her pointing out, should you really be on your feet if you literally just woke up? And I think that might bring us to the bank, actually. Yeah, and yeah, I was not expecting a superpowered supervillain this early in the yeah. You know, like Arrow had, you know, important villain characters from right away, but it's, you know, not quite superpowered immediately. You know, it was more like influence, money, ruthless intentions and such in the at the very start of Arrow. But yeah, and it is pretty cool him using the weather powers. And it's one of those things where I'm glad that the show came out when it did, because by 2014, yeah, you know, stuff like that could look convincing. You know, there's stuff from, you know, further back. I don't want to go too hard on the first X-Men movie. I will just note that one of the people, I think maybe the guy in charge of the visual effects, said, I think it was on the DVD of the second X-Men movie, he himself said that he rarely says this about his own work, but he was a little disappointed. But he wasn't completely happy with what he did on X-Men 1, which also has weather powers. And I personally don't think it's like bad there, but you know, it could have been at least a little better there, if not for how, you know, that was still, like, CG was not always, like, today, if, you know, the studio has patience and doesn't force the you know, affects people to change stuff at the last moment, and there's enough money for it, then today you can make seamless CG. And in 2014, that was also the case. Let's see. I think that brings us to the... Let's see. Yeah, I think that's when they go to the police station and, yeah, witnesses. And I like that every cop who, the first time they see Barry back from the coma, they're genuinely happy to see him back, And I think that does... Oh, right. I just realized I completely forgot the whole part with... Yeah, so obviously, yeah, they managed to track down Mardon thanks to Barry, and he shoots the guy. I guess that broken pen's not looking so bad now, is it? And that's, of course, how, Joe ends up partnering with Eddie. And let's see, then we have the... yeah, 100% understand how it was that Martin was thought to be dead. The plane clearly exploded. How could he possibly have made it out? But, and that's a very effective storytelling engine. Season 1 of Arrow had the list of names that have failed the city. And this one has, the particle accelerator explosion gave various people superpowers, and some of them are using them for villainy. So, Flash is, without Flash, they genuinely, the episode does a really solid job of making it clear nobody else can stop someone like Martin. How would you even, And, even if, let's hypothetically say that Joe had fired into the volcano, maybe hit Martin, who's going to stop the tornado itself, though? That was Barry's doing. And let's see. So the I think the next thing was... Yeah, so Barry, he sees that one of the, there's a guy being arrested or something, and he's trying to go for the gun, and Barry, just reacts. He doesn't even know yet how to control his super speed, but he has a good heart and now also fast legs, and now he just has to, by the end of the episode, it seems like he's going to, they are in sync now. He can control the fast legs as well. But the let's see. Yeah, so he goes to... Let's see. I think that might be when Martin... Yeah, so there's right outside the police station, Barry manages to heroically save Iris as from the car that goes flying, and then he catches up to him, and yeah, we were told, 200 miles. So he can run fast enough for the... Oh, right. I think did I accidentally skip the... Yeah, I'm struggling a little bit to keep track of... Yeah, but there's also... Yeah, there's the part where he runs to the... Yeah, he's running into things. He accidentally throws himself against a car. Doing the police job for them, I guess. That's how much of a people pleaser he is. And yeah, so he goes back to Star Labs and talks to them, and yeah, they test how fast he can go. And yeah, I think that's when he realizes there was someone in the, there was a figure running at high speed there in, when his mother died. And the yeah, I appreciated them giving him this really dorky looking, yeah, the suit, which, this dorky looking suit is the only thing that's going to... Yeah. Anyway, the let's see. Yeah, I appreciate that Barry is a little awkward, and he does also clearly feel bad. Yeah, honestly, I think what they're doing So he says, "You don't smile much," and then she explains why. I think they're doing, like, they're saying, "Hey guys, don't say to women that they should smile more, because there might be a reason for it. You are not owed a smile." And yeah, she lost her fiance and hopes for a career. Her boss is, yeah, that whole thing was, and later in the episode, she does smile when, I think it's the tornado being stopped or was it a hurricane? I do not know the difference between those two phenomena. Apologies to, there was a teacher once who tried to help me understand. I think I got it right in the exam, actually, come to think of it, but that was like 15 years ago, I think, and I do not dabble in weather phenomena anymore. Anyway, but yeah, and they talk about, Barry has to learn how to stop. He can run, and he also has to focus during running. And those are indeed some of the things we see in comics as well, when you have a speedster, which it's one of those things, like, I'm not saying it's always necessary, but it can be a really, really great thing for someone who has superpowers to also have some weakness. I'm not saying that, like, for sure, there are some really amazing stories where someone has superpowers and they don't really encounter something that weakens them, you know. Um, but yeah, sometimes it can be really great to have, and that's also something they can build on. I can imagine they can get multiple episodes out of him working to, because, like, with that realization, with the, maybe there was someone there and they maybe also was really fast, like, that might distract him, and yeah. Let's see. I think that does bring us to, so yeah, he runs fast enough that but you're right, that was also one of the things, the fact that he ends up crashing into these, water things, by the end of that track, that also feels like that makes it feel more real. And they display that he has super healing. And let's see. I think that might bring us, let's see. What was the other thing? Yes, so Martin in the car, and Barry catches up to him and lets himself into the car. And the yeah, another car crash. And yeah, Martin uses his powers and disappears when the fog rolls in. And yeah, so Barry tells Joe the truth, and Joe, and we can see this has been building for a while. He's been, so yeah, 14 years, I think it was. He's been, taking as good care of Barry as he could, and he really feels like the kid's head's in the clouds, and he has to face reality. And as soon as he's done saying that, Eddie shows up. So, hey, I didn't hear any of what you just said to Barry, but I think he was right about everything. And let's see. Yeah, and they go to the, let's see. Right, really appreciated when Barry is going through Star Labs, and there's a cell that used to have some, yeah, I think I might know something about the what that cell used to contain. Not least of which because it says Grodd right there. And I really appreciate, I don't know how, if they really are going to have that particular character. At this point, I don't think that there's really anything that is too comic booky for the Arrowverse. Yeah, it could be really fun to have that character. That's one of those that's like, if you try to tell someone who doesn't really care about comic books that that's in a comic book, and more than one comic book, their eyes will glaze over. It's honestly pretty hilarious. But I think that does bring us to right. And here early on, there's the assertion that no, there's definitely no way that anybody else has these powers. You are unique, Barry. And then later he does admit, yeah, other people have superpowers because of the particle accelerator, which also helps explain why, I believe the rest of the three others at Star Labs are also going to participate in, stopping the various supervillains that have evidently been granted superpowers by the particle accelerator incident. And yeah, I appreciate that, he already has an entire team here. Took Oliver a little longer to have, yeah. I mean, at the very start, he didn't even have one other person working. Yeah, I think that brings us to the, let's see. Yeah, I think that does bring us to the part where so yeah, we have, yeah, so Iris goes up, what can I do for you, detective? And he says, you can stop pretending like you can't stand me when your dad's around. And she explains, she jokes that he would literally, yeah, sounds like an overreaction, but she does know her father better than, yeah. And Barry, of course, sees the two of them. And I do really appreciate her explaining, he took he took the shifts, Joe's shifts, so that Joe could visit. That's genuinely really sweet. Like, I do appreciate, although I guess I can't rule out that he might at some point, there might be something dark about the character, but right now he does seem like a real sweetheart. So I do think, as much as I do, there are some romantic comedies that I love where, we love to hate the partner that we hope, they don't end up with, but I do really appreciate when it is just, no, they're just a person, Let's see. I think that does bring us to the, yes, so yeah, so the big climax, yeah, very, very different. Like, no Arrow episode in the first two seasons ends in quite this same way. I really appreciate that they didn't try to, like, seeing the success of Arrow, they didn't try to Arrowify, Flash, because, like, he's not real. I haven't read that many of the comics, but to my knowledge, he is not really a martial artist. He is fast, and there are things that they haven't brought up on the show yet, so I'm not going to go into detail about them, but there are things that come with that speed, but it's not really martial arts, and it's not a bow and arrow and stuff like that. So yeah. Oh, right. Now I remember. So yeah, before the climax. But yeah, it felt like really classic comic book and comic book media kind of, superpower fighting, and, trying to figure out, okay, so one of them has these powers and the other one has those powers. What would be fun and interesting to have them do to each other? And yeah, like, I'm sorry if you can't appreciate the idea of someone running so fast in the opposite direction to stop a tornado. I don't know how to talk to you. I'm sorry. I'm sure you're a very nice person, unless you still support ICE, I guess. But Yeah. Let's see. I think. Yes. So he runs to, Starling City and explains some stuff to Oliver. And I like that Oliver wasn't wearing the mask during that, you know, because like, yeah, they're friends, and I thought it worked well that he says, you didn't run this far just to see a friend, did you? Because yeah, he didn't like him right away, but by now they are friends, and that's also like essentially all you really need to know if you didn't watch Arrow. Like, yeah, Flash, Barry is not the first vigilante. He's friends with this other guy, and that's all we actually need. And yeah, I thought it worked really well that Oliver acknowledges, you can be more. You can inspire people in a way that I never could, because at the end of the day, yeah, Arrow is closer to Batman than Flash in that way. I mean, it's this thing of, striking fear into the hearts of evildoers, where Flash, like, again, going off what I've read and like the reputation, yeah, it's more of he's somewhat closer to Superman. It's that thing of like, oh, is that really? Oh wow, I can't believe I'm actually witnessing this hero. They're saving people. It's more that. So, yeah, I felt like they did a really good job capturing that, and I thought it worked to have this sort of. I guess it's not quite handing off of the baton. It's more of like a you can do this too, because it's not like Arrow's stopping. But yeah, and I remember years ago hearing someone thought it was corny. I liked when, first Arrow fires the arrow, and yeah, swings off. It's in his contract. He doesn't have to have very much screen time before he starts using arrows to swing. And yeah, Barry looks at that and goes, cool, and then he runs off, and Arrow looks at that and goes, cool. And yeah, the thing about, you should wear a mask. And yes, so the climax, you have that thing about like, the suit might be able to handle this pressure, but can Barry, it's messing with his vitals, I think she said, the doctor. And yeah, the Martin seems to very easily knock Barry away, and then the the pep talk. And I did really appreciate, so that yeah, although by the end of the episode he looks, I don't see, that's the thing, and I really appreciate that. I don't know if he's a villain or if he's just lying about some things, but yeah, the guy behind the particle accelerator. But yeah, earlier he was unwilling to, he said you are not a hero, and he's like, no, you are a hero, you can do this, and he manages to take out the tornado, and Joe, shoots Martin. And I was also surprised that, so yeah, by the end of this episode, Joe knows Barry's secret. It took a little longer for Oliver to share it with anyone. He snapped a guy's neck in the pilot in order to keep the secret, but that's, again, really appreciate. And yeah, the team also already know, really appreciate that. The secret is not, it also, like, Barry doesn't feel like the kind of person who would hide it from everyone, where Oliver, I appreciate, not before the island, but after the island, he would try to hide this from, I mean, he basically didn't start revealing it to people until, like, it was either himself or them dying if he didn't. So yeah, he was even frustrated with Felicity when she did it. Yeah, I think that brings us to the, let's see. Yeah, I really appreciated Joe apologizing and saying you were right, and they talk about if it was the lightning bolt, or yeah. And that's another thing, now that so yeah, there's a cop who knows that Barry is the Flash and already liked Barry before. I could definitely imagine that he every so often is gonna let Barry know, hey, there's this thing going on over there, and that's, yeah. Especially because, yeah, so let's see. Because they also mention, since the incident with the particle accelerator, there's been a sharp increase in let's see, deaths and disappearances under mysterious circumstances. So they're going to need to really, they're going to need all the help they can get to stop all that, to find and stop all of that, to those villains. And yeah, between Star Labs and those three that work there, in addition to Barry and Joe, that's going to really enable him to find and go up against these various ones. I think that does. I know. I remember when. Let's see. I believe it was the theatrical cut of Justice League. I do not remember his name anymore. I haven't watched anything Brad Jones or his friends in years now, but I remember when that movie came out, watching, the midnight screenings, I think it was called, the video in that series that they did on that movie, and one of them noted, Barry Allen isn't as goofy as he is in the DCEU. And I think they mentioned that this show handled that better. And yeah, I think so. There is some lightness to him, but he's also someone who helps, he's CSI. He sees messed up things and, can be serious. I think that does bring us... Yeah, also was not expecting him in a suit quite this soon, but that's also very cool. And I wouldn't rule out there may be thinking, well, with how popular Arrow was by this point, yeah, people are ready for... We can jump directly to, they get the suit really early on, they get powers and stuff like that, and people will be there for it. And I think those 2 episodes that Barry was in of season 2 of Arrow also did well. So people were already on board with this casting of Barry Allen, this characterization of him. And, once you saw him struck by lightning there at the end, a lot of people were like, so they really are making him the Flash, And the, let's see... And as mentioned earlier, the internet was around in, when these episodes aired. So anyone who didn't know who Barry Allen was and what happens when a Barry gets struck by lightning, they, yeah, they would quickly find out. And then, many were excited. Right, I think in the original comics it was lightning and chemicals. I think the particle accelerator was a more recent... Was that maybe in the New 52? I'm not sure if that was only then or if it even was then, but I can imagine, and certainly, that enables them to use it as a storytelling engine, story engine, to say, oh yeah, various people, got superpowers like that. Wasn't that also... Didn't Smallville do a similar thing, but with kryptonite? I think it's been so many years since I watched that. Holy crap. Have I watched... I'm not sure I've watched any Smallville in the last 20 years almost. But yeah, I did watch that. I do have them on DVD. I probably will at some point do that show as well. I got it years ago. Yes, moving on. The let's see. Yes, I thought it worked well that Barry talking to Henry and them having these sweet little you know yeah, like both of them saying I love you, and the let's see. Yeah, that is part of it. I don't know if it's going to end up happening or if something's going to subvert it or something, but as of this episode, I'm definitely emotionally invested in seeing if Barry can actually clear his father's name. And like, holy crap, 14 years for a crime he didn't commit. Everyone thinks that he killed the woman he loves, the mother of his son. Like, holy crap. And the yeah, when he said, change your name, and then Barry said, I'm proud you're my father. That's just so great. Yeah, I'm not saying all parents are perfect. A lot of them aren't, and some are downright abusive, and that's obviously also something that needs that should be taken seriously. But then Arrow already went someone into that with Malcolm. But yeah, every so often we should have depictions where yeah, parents are really happy for their kids' success, and the kids are happy that their parents are their parents, stuff like that. And I think that pretty much right. I appreciate that the guy playing Henry is, if I understand correctly, he played Barry in an earlier iteration of the Flash. I didn't. Yeah, something from the 1990s, and yeah, that's very cool. And yeah, 24 years later, I think it was from 1990. Yeah, 24 years later, he had another Barry. They're multiplying at an entirely reasonable rate. Let's see. I think that might, but yeah, I'm genuinely not entirely sure. Like, on the one hand, I could see Barry ending up with Iris, though obviously it would require, like, yeah. Right now, Eddie is that would not be right. And I also appreciate the thing about, like, well, Barry's kind of obsessed with these kinds of things. I don't know if I would say obsessed. I guess you don't read his blog. That's genuinely kind of sweet that he does read the yeah. And let's see. I think that might bring us to yeah. And on the other hand, I wouldn't rule out Barry ending up with Dr. Snow. And right, I guess I haven't really come right out and said it, but really, really digging the cast. They all give really solid performances. I can hardly wait to see more. That was a real gutsy tease there at the end. I mean, I thought that it was already like a lot when we see that he's got a secret compartment that he clearly hasn't told the others about, and then he stands up out of the wheelchair. But then we see, a headline in the year 2024, like, holy crap. What were you gonna do if you didn't get as many? I mean, I don't. Let's see. Okay, so I have them right. I'm gonna go off camera for just a few seconds. Yeah, as far as I can tell, there are indeed 9 seasons total of this show, so I guess they will end up around 2024. Did they have that much of a plan? I get they at least had some idea of where they were going to end that. But yeah, that's really, really cool. And it's one of those things of like, so does that machine tell him what will happen or what might happen if nothing changes? And yeah, I can hardly wait to find out. And yeah, like I do not know if this is going to be that he's like trying to help Barry because he knows what will happen in the future, or help Barry so that that future doesn't come to be, or what exactly. And yeah, like I genuinely am not entirely sure if he's hero or villain, because like there is that thing about, keep your enemies closer. And I think that does pretty well cover the entire episode. Right. I like that so the title, there at the end, I think it was Cisco had an idea for a new name, and I think it's going to catch on, and then it goes to the title card, The Flash, and yeah. Let's see. I think that covers everything, and I have been talking for almost twice as long as the episode's runtime, so yeah. But yes, I guess I'll just briefly, so yeah. In the not too distant future, somewhere in time and space, not very many days from now, I will start on Fear the Walking Dead. And yes, so I did also really appreciate they talk about that the tornado, they say. Oh, right. I did also really want to make sure to say Martin, the actor, gave a really strong performance. Like yeah, that is villain material. The way his face, like, he looked evil. And right, I also really like the thing about, really, that's all and then he's like, you're right, I should think bigger. Me and my cop mouth. And yeah, you have the thing about, why would God need a starship? I mean, rob banks. And let's see. I think that might cover. Right. And not only was it mentioned that there has been a sharp spike in the deaths and disappearances under mysterious circumstances, and also the fact that Star Labs, we're already seeing they're using equipment to help find supervillains. I think it's the Doctor who says, what was it, like, there was a dramatic increase in, and it turns out, it was Martin at the where the cops already went, and they went there because of the sketch artistry. And the but yeah, he brought the files that he said, look at all these, people who have died or disappeared under mysterious circumstances. There you go. That's this show's version of the notebook of names of people who have failed Starling City. So very nicely done. And there's still room for, maybe every so often it's the, they just note, oh wow, there was something, there was a news story that mentioned something weird. Maybe Barry should go investigate. And yeah, it was clever about the suit. So apparently it was originally for firefighting. Yeah, I guess I could see that. The thing about how it doesn't burn, and we did see his clothes did start to burn because he moved that fast. But yeah, so when they talk about the tornado and how dangerous it is, they say it's F5, which means that if it were a Google browser, it would refresh the web page, but if it were a notepad, it would print the date and time.